Hi, everybody. Welcome to the press. Good to have you here this week. We've got a bunch of different tournaments to go over. We have a unique one on the PGA Tour that we're going to start with in the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. We have a major championship this week on the LPGA in the Chevron Championship. We have the PGA Tour champions playing in the Mitsubishi Electric Classic, not Championship. This one's in Georgia. The other's in Hawaii. We've got the Volvo China Open on the DP World Tour. We're doing an audio-only version of the show this week for the very specific reason that there makes no sense to model the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. So this is all going to be audio-only, a little bit of feel, a little bit of flavor, but not a full-bore normal show where we go into every single thing, because this is basically a tournament for funsies, and there are obviously some serious components to it, but the data just doesn't really kind of make sense to dive into. So I do want to talk about the Zurich Classic and the Chevron. We'll spend a few seconds on the Volvo China Open and the Mitsubishi Electric Classic, and then we'll get out of here for the week. So let's start with the Zurich Classic, played once again this year at TPC Louisiana in Avondale, Louisiana. I covered this tournament when it was a individual tournament. That was, almost 15 years. I think it was 15 years ago, maybe 16, maybe 14 years ago. But back when I was with Golf Channel, and this is a Pete Dye Jam. Done with the help of Bobby Weed, and the player consultant was Steve Elkington on this. It's 7,425 yards, par 72. It's a relatively flat golf course. I mean, you're in the bayou, so don't expect a whole lot of land movement here. It's on the outskirts of New Orleans. It's probably, 30 minutes from in New Orleans itself to get to the golf course, depending on which part of New Orleans, which, by the way, if you've never been, please go. God, New Orleans is great. I would love to go back. It's been too long since I've been there. And that's not even just the drinking part of it. The food in New Orleans is incredible. So get there if you can. But the defending champions here are Ben Griffin and Andrew Novak. This kind of set off a great year for Ben Griffin and propelled him to a career year. And Andrew Novak, this was his first PGA Tour win. Big deal for him to kind of break through after having a lot of close calls between 24 and 25. This year, the purse is $9.5 million, a little bit more than $1.37 million per player on the winning team. The prize money this week and the FedEx Cup points are both kind of smushed together. So the winners of the tournament get and split what would normally go to the first and second place finishers in an individual tournament. And in a regular event on the PGA Tour, that's 500 points to the winner, 300 points to the runner-up. So they combine to get 800, and they split it down the middle. So they each get 400. Same thing is true on prize money. They take the first place prize money and the second place prize money, which effectively accounts for 29% of the purse, 28.8. They split that up. So 14.4% goes to each player. So that's how they'll handle it this week. Remember, this is a unique tournament in terms of format. So you're going to alternate formats. So you're going to have your alt shot, then your best ball, and you're going to flip that after a cut's made. There are fewer teams this year. There's 74 teams instead of 80. So instead of 160 players, it's 148, 12 fewer. And from what I gather, the cut line is still the same, so the top 33 in ties. So that kind of benefits a little bit. But the top 33 in ties, we'll get through. So, that all said, this is a tough tournament to predict because the alternate shot format and compatibility with that as partners versus compatibility in best ball, where really you're just two players playing on the same side trying to get the best score, are totally different. Alternate shot, you really want a complementary player. You want someone who plays golf kind of like you in some ways or augments your skill set, right? You don't want two guys who bomb the ball who have no touch in alternate shot. You need one of you who can putt, or you need a good driver and a good iron player, or you need a good tee to green guy and a good around the green guy, a good putter type thing. You need that complementary golf because you're going to alternate tee shots, right? One's going to take the odds, one's going to take the evens on the tee shots. You're going to plan that around on the golf course based on your skill set. But then once you get to the best ball format, you play it however you want, right? I mean, if your guy's ball, in pocket, right, he's not playing the rest of the hole, then the pressure is on you. But otherwise, it's really up to you how you want to handle it. And you got to get the ball in the hole your own way. And if you can do that, then, you have a pretty decent chance. So you're obviously going to make your moves in best ball in terms of against par. But I think you can gain the most strokes relative to the field, not to par, in alt shot. Alt shot is where this tournament is won and lost typically. Teams that are having a good week can play best ball. Teams that win play alt shot well. So, that all said, top of the table is the Fitzpatrick brothers, Matthew and Alex. They are 12-1. I've seen them 11-1. I've seen them 13-1. 12 seems nicely in the middle here at Odds Checker. Matt's obviously won 2 of the last 3 times out. Almost won the Players. Before that, had a okay Masters. Not his best work, but good enough. But obviously won the Heritage, a place he really loves. This is his second win there. And won at Tampa. Ball striking courses. I don't think these are necessarily ball striker courses. They're not, right? There are some difficult approach shots on this golf course. But not in the same way that I think of Harbor Town, which is also a Pete Dye Jam, versus TPC Louisiana. It's a little bit easier tee to green wise. But don't go and say Alex Fitzpatrick is just here to be here, just trying to get a PGA Tour card. Just won the DP World Tour. Big breakthrough win for him. He's feeling good about himself. And he's in a position, potentially, if he keeps playing well this year, to get a card through the PGA Tour card through the DP World Tour. But he can get it in 1 week here this weekend. That's why they play this tournament, because that's a possibility. And they're brothers. That's nice. But I do like their chances. I mean, there's not dead weight on the other side of the ledger with Alex Fitzpatrick. You got Shane Lowry back in the tournament. He's not partnering with Rory McIlroy this year. Instead, he's partnering with Brooks Koepka. They're 15.5-1. Kind of like that. They can play their own brand of golf. Lowry has an incredible short game. The differences in what they are, I think, helps an alt shot. They could be really interesting. Ryan Gerard and Sudarshan Yelamaraju are the third favorites on the board at 17.5-1. That's crazy. Crazy stuff to me. That's absolutely nuts to me. So, David Ford was Ryan Gerard's original partner, right? He's a young kid playing under PGA Tour U, but he withdrew. So the new partner is Yelamaraju, and all of a sudden, they rocket up to third favorite. I mean, Gerard's a great player. Yelamaraju is a fantastic ball striker. I actually really like this combination. It could be very interesting. And this is the kind of tournament that would make sense for. Does it make sense that they are ahead of Ben Griffin and Andrew Novak at 20-1? No, but sure. Michael Thorbjornsen and Carl Phillips are 20-1. Thorbjornsen's been playing great. Carl Phillips showed some signs of life at Harbor Town. Kind of interesting. Johnny Kiefer and Michael Brennan are 22-1. Michael Brennan hits the ever-living hell out of the ball. Johnny Kiefer still hits it pretty far, but not Michael Brennan far. He's had some signs, but not enough to make them 22-1 in my view. If you're going to go bet at this number, you'd rather go after Aaron Ryan, Sahith Theegala, or more likely Haotong Li and Jordan Smith. Haotong Li is going to have so much fun this week, and I think it'll come through. I think he will enjoy this kind of golf. And you've got Wyndham Clark and Taylor Moore at 25-1. Wyndham Clark's been playing better. This is a little bit more of an open course. I think this kind of lines up with Taylor Moore, who won at Valspar. It could be interesting. I don't love it. I would rather bet Matt Wallace and Marco Penge at 25-1. Penge keeps it in play better, hits the crap out the ball. Matt Wallace is a gamer. I think they're going to have a great time. Matt McCarty and Mac Meisner are 26-1. I like Mac Meisner a lot, and I've been kind of waiting for him to get a PGA Tour win. I don't think it should be this number. Then you've got Davis Thompson and Austin Eckroat at 30-1. Austin Eckroat is not who he was the year he won twice. Davis Thompson's still quite good. Then I'm going to just kind of go down a little bit more down the board. We're not going to go everybody here since we just have the voice stuff. So we're just going to go over some of the guys that I like here. I like the Norwegian duo, Christopher Reitan and Chris Ventura at 35-1. Chris Ventura hits the heck out of the ball. So is Reitan. Reitan's a better player, had a nice Masters. I think that's a fun pairing to kind of have together. Austin Smotherman and Andrew Putnam is very interesting to me at 48-1. Andrew Putnam's been playing pretty well, had a chance to win the Texas Open. Austin Smotherman's been playing pretty okay, had some decent finishes, good ball striker. I think would like this kind of golf course. So I think they're an interesting team to play. Then you've got AJ Ewert and Casey Jarvis at 60-1. I really like that team. Casey Jarvis almost won 3 times in a row on the DP World Tour this year, but won twice in a row and got darn close in the third. And he's going to the PGA Tour next year. Like, this is a pre-card start kind of thing for him. And AJ Ewert has been a really nice surprise coming out of Q School. One of the 5 guys that got out of Q School this year. He can play, and he's made a lot of cuts. I like what he brings to the table here. I think he's an interesting partner for Jarvis. But, there is kind of the reality that Jarvis hasn't played a lot of PGA Tour events, right? So this is still kind of new-ish territory for him, but not so, he's been over here. Another team that I like is Blades Brown and Luke Clanton. Blades Brown was the second place finisher on the Korn Ferry Tour last week. He's been close to wins on the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour this year. He's been fabulous. Luke Clanton is struggling. He's a good player. I mean, he's an incredible talent, but he's struggling on the PGA Tour at the moment. And I think being able to partner with a guy like Blades Brown, who is 133rd in the world all of a sudden, and if you look at his last 5 starts, runner-up, miscut, 3rd place, T40, 3rd place. Like, he's having a good year, and he's moved up in that stretch of time from this year. From the end of last year, he was 502nd in the world. He is now 133rd in the world. So he is playing on the right trajectory. He's going on the right path. I think this is an interesting team, and I think Blades Brown can kind of reinvigorate Luke Clanton a little bit, who's been a little beaten down lately. I think he's very interesting. Then I wanted to call your attention to John Vanderland and Chandler Blanchet. Chandler was on our show, The Road to French Lick. He won last year's Korn Ferry Tour Championship at French Lick Resort. He's a French Lick staffer, so that's why he was on the show. But he was telling us he's really striking the ball very well, and he's just trying to kind of put it all together. I think in a team setting, this kind of can work for him. Vanderland's a very good ball striker. He's had some early first-round success on the PGA Tour. Putting it together for 4 rounds has been tough for him, but I think that makes them an interesting group at 90-1. And then beyond that, it starts to get pretty late, pretty early. I mean, I don't see a world where, someone super deep wins this thing. I just don't. I will say, I do think Kita Nakajima and Kensai Hirata are interesting at 150-1. They really haven't done a lot this year on the PGA Tour, but I do think they're an interesting pairing, and they could do something, but I wouldn't bet that with your hard-earned money. So that all said, I think you pick like 3 or 4 teams in this tournament, you call it, right? Go for a couple of guys up top for whatever reason you want to pick, and then you go for a couple long shots, maybe a 60, maybe a 90, maybe 100, somewhere in that range, somewhere between 55 and 100-1, and just call it a day. And do not think about it any more beyond that, because the format is such that a lot of big rapid changes can happen, and if you're trying to bet it live, you're going to be behind the action, and you're just not going to like the numbers you get probably, unless you have some weird inkling. And in that case, you should probably bet them before the tournament, not during the tournament. So that's the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. Let's talk about the Chevron Championship, which is the first major of the year on the LPGA this season. They have 5. This is the first one, $8 million tournament, $1.2 million to the winner. The tournament has moved venues this year. So they have been at the club at Carlton Woods in the Woodlands, which is a suburb of Houston, but really it's Houston. I mean, Houston's enormous. And they've moved into the city to the other side of town to Memorial Park, which is where, yes, they play the Texas Children's Houston Open on the PGA Tour. So they've just recently been there. I don't know that this is a good permanent solution for the Chevron Championship. Apparently, they have dug some kind of pool for the winner. The tradition is to jump in a lake. There used to be Poppy's Pond out in Palm Springs or out in the desert. And that they kind of built this pool into this pond over the years specifically for the winner to jump into. And then when they went to Carlton Woods, they had this kind of pond there on the 18th hole it was dirty and nasty, but they kind of created a special area to jump into, and that that was kind of its own scene. And now they apparently have a short pool for the players to jump into, or whatever player and caddy combo, whatever, that wins, they're going to jump into off the 18th green. I don't know that I like that, but nevertheless, they're trying to keep the tradition going. So, this golf course for the LPGA is playing 6,811 yards. Par 72, it's not normally 72 for the Texas Children's Houston Open. 132 player field, cut to the top 65 in ties. And I think this is a little bit of a longer golf course. As we talked about a few weeks ago when we did the Houston Open show, this is a wider open golf course. The rough isn't very high, so there's not a whole lot of penalty for missing off the tee. I mean, there can be, but there's not really, unless you blast it so far offline. And even in that case, you can probably get over some trees and get back into play. There's not a lot of bunkering in play. The greens are tricky. They're big. They're meant to be big. So iron play is important here. It's a ball striker's course. Get yourself in a position to make putts, and then you can make them. That all said, I am looking toward players who are longer off the tee and playing pretty well overall. I think length here matters. I think it really is going to matter a lot. And I think that excludes some players that are kind of at the top of the table. So that said, Nelly Court is the favorite at 5-1. She's lost to 3 players this year. She's actually lost to 2 players. She's lost 3 times. She's been second 3 times. She lost to Hugh Kim twice in back-to-back weeks. She lost to Lauren Coughlin at Shadow Creek. She won the season opening event that was shortened to 54 holes in Orlando. Those are her 4 starts. She's playing great. She's probably heading back toward world number 1. She's one of the top 10 players on the LPGA in distance. She hits it far. She's got a stinger that goes even farther. I think she is going to feel right at home at this golf tournament. Gino Tittokun is a little different in terms of length, doesn't hit it as far, super great iron player, just all around great player. But I think she's at a bit of a disadvantage here. Hugh Kim, the aforementioned, she won twice this year. I think she's a little gassed, 16-1. I would go for Haydon Ryu instead at 22-1 because she hits it pretty far. She has a hard time closing the deal, but she hits it pretty far. Miyu Yamashita is 22-1. She had a close call. Well, relative close call at Shadow Creek. I don't think this golf course plays to her favor at all. I would look at 25-1 players, multiple ones. Se-Young Kim just lost in a playoff in Los Angeles to Hannah Green, who's also 25-1 last week. Been playing very, very good golf on the rise for really the last 6-7 months. Sorry. Hannah Green has won 4 of her 5 starts worldwide this year. 2 on the LPGA. This past weekend at the JM Eagle LA Championship, which she's won 3 of the last 4 years at 2 different venues, which is kind of crazy. But she also won the HSBC Women's World Championship. Great short field to start the Asian fall swing or Asian winter swing. And she's won twice in her native Australia. She won the Women's Australian Open and the Women's Australian PGA Championship. So those are big victories. She's got a lot riding high. She's 5th in the world, 25-1. She hits it far enough to, I think, make this interesting. Minjee Lee, also Australian, makes sense at 25-1. Minwoo's sister, she won a major here in Texas last year at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. So she can clearly handle potentially windy conditions. She hits the ball pretty far. Minwoo's probably got plenty of notes that she can work off of. Minwoo's played this golf course very well. I think she makes a world of sense at this golf tournament. Charlie Hall, same thing, 26-1, makes a lot of sense. Aki Iwai and Chizzy Iwai, 26 and 29-1. They're twin sisters. They make a lot of sense. I think you start to kind of go down toward in length. Think about like Austin Kim. I think she's top 5 on the LPGA in distance. Been trending toward a win. 50-1 would be kind of a shocking place to do it in a major, but it would also make sense given that no one really knows this venue well enough. Brooke Henderson, I think, is going to get a fair amount of love from bettors this week, even though she hasn't really been great on a major stage, truly great on a major stage in a while, but she has the length. She hits the ball far, and she can get it out there, which I think is a big help. Same thing goes for Gabby Lopez, who's also 66-1. She's got plenty of length off the tee. A couple long shots to consider here. First of all, Patty Tavatanakit is 100-1. She hits it so far. She has won this tournament when it was played out in Palm Springs in the COVID year. And she's very streaky, extremely streaky. And right now she's playing great at 100-1. That makes sense. I would also look at Angel Yin, 82-1, who's been having a pretty good year. Not as good as last year, but a good year at 82-1. I think is worth a look at that number. She hits the crap out the ball, got plenty of length off the tee. Esther Henslake could be an interesting long shot at 110-1, also pretty long off the tee. Has a fair amount of pop in the bat. I think a lot of outcomes can happen here, given the venue, given that most people don't know it. But I think if you're going to try and take longer shots and it gets pretty long pretty early, then you're going to want to look at players who just hit the ball pretty far. And you can kind of go find that for yourself. But I think in that 110-1 or less, you have plenty of options to work with that will give you a good card. You can almost overbet this tournament because of the value associated with length, but also the players who are in good form and for other reasons should like this golf course. Whether that's family experience, whether that's wind, whether that's form, whatever it is. There's a lot of different players you can go with in this event. And I think this is the event of the two we've gone over so far that I would bet this week more extensively. I mean, I know if you're a PGA Tour bettor, you might feel uncomfortable going after the LPGA, but there's actually some pretty decent value here. And there is kind of like with Scotty right now. Scotty's also had a bunch of second place finishes and a win this year. But yes, they are the prohibitive favorites because they are playing better than everybody else, but other people are sneaking by them. So there is an opportunity here, and it's totally plausible that in this major and the next men's major, that the number one player in the world dominates and wins and cashes, tickets for people at 4 and 5-1, and you still had decent bets. You still got close. That's very plausible here. But I think there are a lot of good, valuable bets here this week. All right, Mitsubishi Electric Classic on the PGA Tour champions. I'm not betting it. I'm not betting the champions for a while. The only bet to make is Stuart Sink or Zach Johnson right now. I mean, I guess you could throw out Steve Alker. He's been playing pretty well also. Maybe three guys as we used to do this on the champions for a while. Basically just a weekly arbitrage. Bet a unit, a fifth of a unit to a unit on 5 guys total, 5 different guys, the guys that were all winning everything, and then just see which one won. And you might lose a little bit if the best guy that week won, but if the 5th guy won, you covered yourself and made a tidy little profit. I think you can do the same thing here with Sink, Zach Johnson, and Steve Alker. I think that's the way to go. And everything else is just wasting your time. On the Volvo China Open, DP World Tour is back. They are in Shanghai for this one. Ashton Wu was the champion here last year. This is an interesting event in that a lot of these guys have not played the last several weeks, right? Eugenio Chikaro had a very nice week on the Corn Ferry Tour last week, and I think that makes him interesting at 18-1, but he's also coming from playing in Mexico. So that's a long haul to China. I know he's young, but that's a long way to go. I don't care. I think you'd rather look at Daniel Hillier or Angel Ayora. They're both 11-1. They're the co-favorites. Andy Sullivan seems to play well in Asia, 35-1. And then it gets pretty tricky at that point because then you really don't know who's got what. But maybe a Freddie Shot at 70-1. And I will keep betting MJ Defoe at 80-1 as well. I think still running pretty well from his back-to-back on the Challenge Tour. And maybe a Jason Scrivener. He seems to play well in Asia also. So pretty light on the DP World Tour from my side. There's just not enough time to go into it. But I think I would keep it pretty light. Again, I would probably focus on the Chevron. You get some decent value there. I think you can come away with a nice weekend for yourself if things go your way and Nelly Korda doesn't win. And if she does, then, oh well, so be it. All right, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. You can get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com. I'm on social media at Ryan Ballingy or Ryan Ballingy Golf. You can find Golf News Net on your favorite social media service at the handle Golf News Net. You can join Golf News Net for $40 for 1 year, $70 for 2 years, or $100 for 3 years over at golfnewsnet.com. Get access to all of our tools, analysis, weekly articles just for members. And you can email me anytime, and I'm happy to answer your questions as best I can about whatever is on your mind about golf, life, whatever. Happy to talk. But if you remember, that access is pretty easy to get. All right. Be back with another show next week. We have another signature event next week. We're back at Doral for the first time in a decade. We'll see what happens there. We'll see what the makeup of the field is after the Zurich Classic. There's still the Swing 5 to be decided. The next 10 will be decided as well. We'll get a better glimpse of that as we get toward Monday and have a final field for you down there at Doral. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time on The Press. Good luck with your bets this week.